Tonight we are having a conversation with Hermiston Energy Services, a rate discussion with our superintendent, Nate Rivera. Is there anything, Ms. Smith, you'd like to lead with? Okay, I'd just like to remind the council that we are recording tonight, and when you do speak, make sure your microphone's on because it's connected through the system so that the people online can also hear you. All right, you're on, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's been a couple months, several months since we've had an HES update. It's time we have a few things that I wanted to bring to your attention, have some continued discussion about some stuff we've talked about over the past couple of years, give you a COVID-19 update, some policy issue that we want to make sure that we're operating in consistency with the other city policies, and then our cost of service analysis that has been completed this year, looking at the overall cost, what it takes to provide service to the customers of Hermiston Energy Services. So a little bit of background. Most of you guys already know this. We have one new counselor, potentially some new counselors, and so we may be doing a little bit more background in future updates. But HES is a consumer-owned utility, non-for-profit, acquired from PP&L in 2001. So we've been operating 19, almost 20 years. We currently serve about 5,200 customers with an annual sale of 110 million kilowatt hours, 36 miles of overhead, 20 miles of underground primary distribution. Service territory is about 63% of Hermiston. And of those 5,200 customers, half are residential, half are small, medium commercial as far as energy sales goes. So tonight I wanted to talk to you about COVID update, mostly on the financial side. You're aware of policy and procedures that we've been going through. We're consistent with the other city offices, but I want to give you an update of how COVID has been affecting rate base, rate payers, and what it's doing to our current budget. So I'm going to give you a little background on 30, 60, 90-day late payment. So on the left-hand side is total amount of customers. Bottom is the months. And then the different colors represents different years. So purple, which is a little bit difficult to see, is how this year is tracking in 2020. So purple is trending along the bottom line. I don't really put a whole lot of stock into the 30-day delinquent payment. People, for whatever reason, couple days, couple weeks late, that's something that we've seen consistently. So we don't really track those numbers as well because it's not a real good indicator of what's going on with the rate base. So when you get into the 60-day, now the purple is highlighted here with the arrows. This gives you an idea of how many customers we're working with currently that are in the 60 days arrears, so have not paid their bills in 60. When you look, pandemic, this is kind of when we started really tracking this one. First 60 months would put you about here, and this is when people are in that 60-day mark, and you can see how it's starting to trend. Not historically off where we've seen, but a real indicator of the insulation of our community in COVID. People are still, their money is going to their bills. They're still paying their bills. They're still staying consistent. And so it's a positive sign. The last month we've seen some additional funds by the state and the federal government as far as electric utility assistance. We're hoping that indicator on the 60-day, that downward, but we're going to continue watching it. This is all new data, and so trying to extrapolate any big theories about it's a little difficult, but I wanted you guys to be kind of seeing this data first and getting an understanding of what's going on. So this one, the 90-day, this one's a little more concerning. So historically, customers couldn't get into the 90-day non-payment status because they would have been disconnected prior to that. So anybody you see in these historic years would have been somebody who had been working with us, made payment arrangements, some sort of billing arrangement to get in this category. But what we're seeing, because in March of this year, we put a moratorium internally on disconnects for non-payment. So we're seeing that customers are starting to increase in that 90-day, and it's starting to get a little more rapid. This is cause of concern because as we continue with the policy of no disconnects, we really have no incentive to get the customers who are 90 plus days out of not paying their bill to the table to have a discussion. It's something that we're watching real close. Every day we get a daily report, but I wanted to give you guys an update of what it's looking like. So as of October 2020, approximately 20% of HES's total rate base is in some level of non-payment. That sounds like a lot, that seems like a lot, but the previous 3-year average is 15%. Now, what makes us watch this and really want to understand it is we started this year at historical low of 10%.
Our exposure is something we're also watching. So if all those people do not pay their bill on their maintenance status, the city or the city residents can mix up our budget with about $127,000. That's currently where we're at. So about 1.3%. Our historic 3-year average is about 63 million. So those numbers stay pretty consistent. About 15% of the rate base. The 60,000 in the year, that number just continues to grow. So we're watching these numbers. It's really something that we take pretty seriously. So in March, like I said earlier,
previous 3-year average was about 56 a month, so about 1% of our rate base was subject to disconnect for non-payment. That was preventing people from getting beyond their means or beyond a situation where it'd be extremely difficult to come back from. In those 90-day, you have 3 bills, especially summer bills, with some of these customers, it can get over $1,000. We're actively working with the governor's office. All the consumer-owned utilities are actively working to retain control of this option. We don't want to disconnect anybody for non-payment, but we're asking people who are 60, 90 days in arrears to contact us, and we'll work to set up payment arrangements. There is quite a bit of assistance available. It's just getting those people to come to the table. And if we don't have a tool to help them come to the table and learn about and work with these things, it's going to be real difficult. So we're trying to stave off any government mandate that says we can't disconnect for non-payment. Now, in the investor-owned utility side, they have all committed to having no non-payment disconnects until March of 2021. Now, the people who underwrite their losses are their stockholders. The people who underwrite our losses are the raters.
and so that's a big difference. Investor-owned utilities set their rate of return with a profit margin. We set our rates at cost. And so anytime we see some excess exposure to the utility, we really want to pay attention to it and look at options. So what options do we have for our customers? Well, historically, we've had our HEAT program. This is our grant program that helps low-income residents manage their heating and cooling. We subsidize that at $20,000 a year, but that's primarily been for low income. You have to meet a threshold to qualify for these funds. During COVID, we've expanded this program, and now we've made it available to all customers, personal, family, medical, employment crisis, or emergency. So no longer do they have to meet an employment threshold, but they have to document or show proof of one of these causes to qualify for it. Now, we got a huge help from Amazon Web Services earlier this year. They contributed $75,000 to Hermiston Energy Services, and that's going to our heat fund for situations like this. And then we've also put $25,000 from our federal matching dollars into the heat fund. So we have resources available for these non-pays. We just need to get them to the table. We won't write off anybody's full amount. That's not what these programs are designed to do. The customer who creates the usage has to take some responsibility of their usage, but we certainly will work with them and we'll extend the arrangements and do everything we can to help them. So, any questions related to the COVID update?
Yeah, I'm just curious if you have any statistics on people who may have been on auto pay before, who switched off auto pay specifically because or of relating to COVID.
So in our daily reports, we see people who are in the rears with auto pay, and after you have 2 of those that you missed, you're automatically removed from the program. Same with budget billing. And so I can't give you a statistic of how many people. It's a small amount. You know, typically the ones we're seeing with direct deposit, the people who are on average billing. To even qualify for average billing, you have to have a full year of consistent payments. And so we're not really seeing a high level of that.
So do you have a recommendation as far as, or a suggestion as far as how to manage this moving forward?
You know, I think it's still so new, and the data's staying consistent. We're not seeing big swings other than that 90-day. I think anytime you're talking to any of our legislators or the governor's office, reinforce the idea of local control. You know, especially on the utility side, we really need to retain that, because if we can't retain that, our exposure is significantly different. And the way our rates are collected, you know, we're the ones, our customer rate base is really the most vulnerable. And so, you know, we're going to continue to watch it. We talk about it at senior staff. We talk about it in the finance department when it looks like it. But we just wanted to give you guys an initial look and showing you with these previous, you know, 5 months, 6 months, what it's doing to our rate base.
Are we adding, you know, supplementary information to the bill that indicates that there are available funds, that they would call us, these are accessible to you, that can help offset some of your debt that's owed to the city, you know, some sort of statement like that?
Excellent question. Yes, so we've updated our website that has all the available resources that customers can go to access, including the applications for these programs. It's a non-contact process. You can call, use our website. And then we've also had bill messages go on the back of our bills, how you can participate in these programs. And then our partner, Utah Electric, as well as on the reader board sign, things like that. So yeah, we've tried to increase the knowledge. There's been several newspaper reports. We've had stories about the Amazon donation on our website as well. That was in the local newspapers, and so encouraging people to make contact with us is important. And when you get into the late payment, you get additional letters for status and information. Each one of those late payment information letters also has the outline process of what we have available. And that's outside of the CAPCO program that also has some federal and state energy efficiency dollars and programs.
You know, unfortunately, sometimes people don't respond if you don't have a hammer. And I was on a Zoom call this afternoon with Representative Schmidt and Linda Hall from Freewater expressed similar concerns about loss of local control over their public-owned utility and being able to have the right to shut people off if they don't pay. And she has found that, you know, once the threat is out there, they somehow materialize these funds to pay the bill. And so not having that hammer right now has kind of allowed people a free ride, unfortunately. And there are people, I'm sure, that are taking advantage of the system. I just want to make sure that they realize that there are funds that they're potentially losing out on. You know, there's $100,000 out there that the community could be utilizing to help them pay their electrical bill if they come talk to us about it.
Yeah, and we're, you know, it's a unique time in our country and in our region, and we give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And what we're asking is work with us, and we'll work with you. You know, we're not trying to, we're going to proceed with extreme caution. We're not just going to go out and do disconnects. You know, this is after a process of multiple calls, multiple letters, knock on doors, giving them updated status. And so it's not just, you know, we're just going to shut you off without a notice. I mean, we want people to work with us.
I think the city's been very generous with its policy on non-shut-offs, and I think going into this winter months, it would be critical to change, or it would be difficult to change that. And so I don't know where the council's position is on that, but I don't think I'm in a position to recommend changing that policy at this time of year. But I think we need to find some sort of solution to try and encourage people to engage with us to help use those funds that are available. I want our community to have those CARES funds in our community. If we don't use them, they make it to the state.
So like I talked about, through our Smart Hub program, you can access your bill, make payments, make updates to your account, do all those things. It's a way that we can continue contactless service. You can ask questions and do two-way communication with it. And so just continue to let people know that that's an option. So the next topic is an Hcs Collections Policy. Now this is something that's been out of line between the Hermiston utility and the city. And so it's a unique time, and we're not doing any collections We're not turning over any accounts currently for collections, but this is a policy where we're inconsistent, and whenever we can, we try to get on the same page as the state. So when HES turns over collections to a third-party collection company, HES currently receives 70% of that collected amount. So the rate base is covering the other 30% of those collections. Now, when the city uses a third party, the city receives 100% of the collected amount, and the customer pays the third party fees. So as a state entity, we have in statute the ability to have the customer pay the third party fees when they go to collections. HES did not do that from its origination, and I look back and find a reason why, but we know it's a discrepancy between the two policies, and so when we come back, this is one that I want to get direction from you. There's certainly sensitivity to have the conversation. We're not actively using it, but at some point we will, and it's now the time to get on the same page. And this is a question for people.
You look for some, are you looking for some feedback?
Yeah, exactly. Is this the time to get us all on the same page with this policy, or
Yes.
is
Yeah, I think I'm seeing consensus around the table that, yes, the ratepayer should be subsidizing 30% of the debt. And so, the person that is in arrears, I think is what I'm hearing, should be paying that fee. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Is everybody in support of that?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go to the cost of service analysis. So when we start the cost of service analysis, I think it's important to know where we're at. So this is looking at the average monthly bill for a residential Hermiston energy service customer. So at our current time, this is what our rate is. So an average HES customer on a monthly basis pays $111 a month on their utility bill. Milton Free Water, which just had a 15% rate increase within the last month, they historically have always been the region's low energy provider. Now this represents that. Umatilla Electric, 118. Benton, which is Tri-Cities. Columbia Basin, the Hetner area is 140. Pacific Power, which would represent Umatilla, Stanfield, Echo in our area. And then Portland General, Oregon average. So this gives you a starting point. So as far as rates go, we're the most affordable rates for a residential customer in the region. That's not always a good thing. So when we talk about our rate model goals, when we go in looking at what we want to do with rates, we want to make sure we're collecting the appropriate amount of revenue. We try to make the rates as stable as possible, and we try to give as much lead time and predictability about any potential pressures that are going to cause a need for rate change. We want to make sure the rates are equitable among customer classes. We're not looking to cross-subsidize where business owners are paying residential or residential are offsetting business costs. When we do our cost of service analysis, we look at what it costs to serve each individual customer class and set those rates appropriately. And then one of the most important things, and we've heard the feedback from our customers, is make our rates easy to understand. Let us know what we can do to save money on our bills. Let us know what changes we can make. Let us look at our bill and understand how we go. And so these are the primary goals of what we go into anytime we look at it. When we look at HES's rate history, this, since the origination of the utility, this is the rate actions we've taken. Last one was a 1.87% adjustment in 2018. So our results. So we've known this. We've had this conversation for the last 3+ years. That the current rate structure does not collect the revenue needed as far as what we need to serve our rate classes. In 2018 to 2020, we used $1.5 million from bond restructuring, reserves, and construction work plan savings to offset these deficiencies. You know, you guys have seen these numbers before. We've talked about it. In 2018, we had a $1.2 million deficit, about 12.7%, and this is when we made all those changes and moves. That's when you also approved our last rate change, and that was to get us even with those changes. But when we made those changes, converting our construction work plan from a 2-year plan to a 3-year plan, moving all those maintenance costs into our bond fund, our 33 fund, which has now been fully utilized. So we're in approximately the same spot several years later. In 2021, we're projected to have a little over $1 million deficit, about 11.76% deficit in our revenues. Now, where this comes from primarily is BPA rate increase in 2019 of approximately $500,000, and then moving that $450,000 that we took out of system maintenance capital improvements that was in the 13 budget, we moved it to 33. Now 33 has no more funds. We have to move those funds back in to continue our maintenance program for the utility. So first, let's start talking about BPA. This is a difficult one. You know, this is the train that's on the tracks, and trying to get it to move is pretty difficult. There's a history of rate increases, a history of rate pressure from them. You can see over the last, 10 years, we're paying, an additional $2 million a year just in power purchases. We're not getting anything additional for that. That's just what the cost for us to purchase it is. Now, what's driving these? There's always a lot of uncertainties in BPA costs, the revenues. BPA has reduced their costs, but a lot of the regulation and stuff that's placed on them has caused their secondary revenues to decline. Significant increase in renewables puts pressure where historically we sold a lot of power during the winter months to California, and now we're losing that. They changed an application of a low voltage delivery charge. We talked about that in 18 and 19 where we had some exposure. They were revisiting that topic. We advocated pretty hard on that one, but we still saw about a $400,000 annual increase on that charge based on the change. They were originally talking right around $1 million. We got it down, but that's still a significant hit for us. New renewables, gas prices, other factors, it's significant. On a monthly basis, we advocate, we're in Portland, we're working with our trade organizations, we have account executives with Bonneville. We're all putting pressure on them, but every 2 years we seem to get more bad news. And so, we beat them up, we beat them up, we beat them up, but there's only so much they can do with their costs, like everybody else's costs. Then we talk about the construction work plan, like I said, to reduce revenue in 18, 19, and 20. We converted this from a 2-year to a 3-year plan. This was to minimize that rate impact in 2018 and 19. So if you see here, we moved everything from 33, and in 18 and 19, we left 13 blank. So with these funds, essentially now it's calling due. We have $450,000, which is what we spend annually, and a conservative amount to do our line maintenance, some of our capital programs. And we did have $325,000 outlay here for an overhead reconductoring project. Based on the numbers that we saw from the COSA, we're putting that one on hold of this for a year to get through this discussion. And so the number we're talking about is the $450,000. So what does that $450,000 get you? Well, this is your new member connects, your transformers, your meters, system repair, maintenance. We had a pretty big spring storm at the tune of a couple $100,000 that knocked down many trees, backyard services, things like that we have to have money on hand to be prepared for stuff like that. So when you look at our overall HES costs, where are the city's utility bills? So BPA is over half, UEC, so essentially that's our labor force that implements the policies and procedures. 11% of a ratepayer is debt. We have 2 debts. The system purchase in 2001, that will be all paid off in December of 32. We still owe $9.7 million on that. And then we did the construction work plan bond finance. Instead of putting it to the rate base, we financed that. And we owe $4 million on that, and that will be paid off in 2036. Materials and services, this is where your street lights, your in lieu of taxes, conservation, miscellaneous contracts, office supplies, things like that. Here's our capital outlay. This is the transformers, new service meters, system repair and maintenance, and then personnel. So this is something that we're watching closely. It's difficult if we're spending 5% of our overall revenue to maintain and operate the system. It's something you can do for a short term, but it's not a long-term solution. You know, we need to be making sure that we continue to invest in a reliable, affordable system. And so when you guys see this, you can see where our costs are going. The majority of them are in and out costs. You know, BPA, it's the energy used in and out. UEC, it's labor. You know, the debt's something we've committed to. The only thing going back really is the capital outlay, and that's 5% of what we're doing. And so it's something we're watching, trying to create a plan, but we also have to get to a good financial position before we can get more aggressive in those investments. So what we're talking about is the need for individual rate class and customer adjustments. You've seen the numbers. We've talked about it. The recommendation is going to be that we make some sort of rate action. Tonight is a discussion about what that rate action would look like. I'm not bringing to you specific requests on how to implement this. I'm looking for a bigger, broad picture about this is the needs, this is what we need to get there, and how, as a community during this time, are we going to bridge that gap. So previously I said we're a little over $1 million in a deficit. 12.9% is an overall rate increase what we would need for the utility to get breakeven. So right now today, we need 12.9% just to get cash flow basis zero. This includes that $450,000 of annual maintenance coming back into the 13 budget. This does not include 2021 BPA rate increase. We don't know what that's going to be, but we know it will be coming. Capital improvement projects, any big construction projects. We've done some of the test projects with the backyard conversions, which we saw help us during the previous storm. Those things are known to save us money long term, but there's some upfront costs. It doesn't include any of that. It doesn't include any state, federal mandates, energy assistance, debt forgiveness. You know, the feds or the state can mandate us to absorb all those losses without a way to recapture that. We don't know, but we're actively participating in those conversations. So if we get to zero and we get additional mandates from the state or the feds, this budget or what we need, this 12.9% doesn't come in. Any updates in contracts or inflationary costs that may go up between the time that we do it and the next, until the next rate increase. So what does 12.9% look like for that same graph? How does it affect the rate base? So currently we're at a 111. If we implemented the full 12.9 rate increase, our rates would then be at $121 a month. That's what the average residential customer would pay. In between where UEC members are at and Benton PUD Tri-Cities customers are at. Milton Free Water still provides a low cost of power. They have no debt on their system. Their system is paid for. That's where you're seeing that 10%. We would be lower than them, but they have no debt obligation that they're trying to recapture. And so just to help frame the discussion, I think it's important for you to know the decisions you would make at that number. So options, 12.9% increase in the first quarter of 2021. It's going to take us a little time based on the feedback tonight to come back, bring individual rate class adjustments, and then get them into implementation for billing. And then after billing, it's about 45 days before you see that revenue come in. And so taking rate action and actually seeing the return from that rate action is a couple of months. So realistically, we could get this implemented, if we took action in November, we could get it implemented before the end of the year, going into effect in the first quarter. We could look at splitting the rate increase, 2 equal rate increases, January and October, or do 2 rate increases, front-loading a January or early spring rate increase, waiting to see what BPA does, and coming back and doing a larger second half one. But that would be a 9% in the first of the year and potentially 5 to 7% again in October. So that would be a big lift over 1 year. We're open to other options. I wanted to kind of set the table so you guys knew what we were dealing with. These are discussions we've had for the last couple of years, so unfortunately we knew sometime this was going to happen. We've been using reserves. We've been doing all the resources that we could do. We've cut costs. We've minimized expenditures. We're running a very lean budget right now. We have been for about 18 months. But instead of burning what remaining cash we have, we feel it's important that you guys take some sort of rate action and have a conversation tonight about what you think is in the best case. It's a horrible time in our community to be talking these discussions, but at the same time, you guys need to understand where we're at financially. And before we get too far down the road, we want to make sure that we're making appropriate movements.
Question?
Yeah,
So-
that's the entirety of my presentation now is feedback.
When you commented earlier about capital outlay being 5% of the budget, what percent of the budget is capital outlay normally?
It depends on the age of the system. You know, utilities are so unique. We're a relatively new system. When we purchased it in 2001, the system was an age system from PP&L. Part of the motivation of purchasing it was because of its age, so we're gonna have a higher investment level on an annual basis. Same as if you own an older car, it's gonna cost you more to maintain it than if you've been on top of your maintenance. UEC does an excellent job maintaining their system, and they're at 12 to 15% of the annual cost.
So what has it been historically, across, since we've owned it?
Since we've owned it, Russ was very conservative. He was at that 5-7%. When I came on, we had some catch up to do. So for the first 4 years, we went at 11%. And then in the past 2 years, we circled back down, back to that 5%.
So even with these increases, this still only gives you a 5% capital outlay.
Correct.
So is that still providing us enough infrastructure enhancement dollars to maintain and making sure that the system is resilient?
It's a balance. And so what Byron and I have been discussing, what the city manager and I have been discussing is it's a very difficult time to have any kind of rate discussion. So can we go on like this for 18 months? We can. You know, you have to play catch up later. But at this time, we kind of came to the decision that we're going to bring the absolute necessity, not any wants with this. You guys need to know where we're at. We can continue to use a little bit of cash to bridge those if we wanted to separate the rate increase over time. We can do that. We honestly haven't wanted to come during the pandemic because it's a community, it's really difficult for the community, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to have a reliable electric grid and utility system that provides the service during the pandemic. And so, Byron and I discussed it, and that's what we felt like we came to.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we should have had this discussion in March or April, but it just wasn't the time. And so we decided to spend a little bit more of our reserves, hoping that this would not be long-term, but at this point, we really have to talk about it, so.
Yeah, who knows at this point how long it's going to last. I guess the question that I'm getting to is our system, we've made some significant enhancements to the system, and its reliability has been significantly improved in the last couple of years. In fact, I don't know that I've personally experienced an outage at my house this year at all. And so that resiliency, I think, is critical and important to not only our homeowners going into a winter time, these windstorms that we've been surviving, and our business owners, lost electricity, lost revenue to a lot of businesses, as we saw in the accident that happened last Friday, shut down all those businesses on that corner. That's a lot of money lost. And so I think it's important to maintain the health of our system too, and so I want to make sure we aren't shortchanging or shortcutting, that to, I understand the desire to help save taxpayers, but I don't want it to be at the cost of the resiliency of the system. Other comments? Yeah, David?
I was just curious, you were talking about the average at 111 or 121 with the rate increase. What percentage of our 90-plus day out delinquency does that average rate represent? I think I might have said that backwards.
Oh, okay.
So basically, of the people that are paying $111,
Oh, okay.
how many of those are 90-day delinquent or are those people potentially higher or lower than the average?
So historically, what we've seen, I can give the actual number based on today's data when I come back, and I can show you that. I can talk historically. What we've seen is a lot of our low-income customers who tend to be our 60-day delinquents tend to live in older manufactured homes, apartments, uninsulated, poor heating systems, and so very little access to conservation energy efficiency, and so their bills are already very high, especially in the winter and summer months, because they have poor windows, poor insulation, older homes, and so they're not usually in that 114 range. They're typically in the $200 plus during the peak months. Yeah, and so we have several programs as well as CAPCO to go in and work with those customers, but yeah, historically we see those customers with less efficient homes or apartments.
Thank you. Make sure you talk in your microphone. Manuel, make sure you talk in your microphone. I want people online to be able to hear you.
Thank you. For clarification, I saw the paperwork over there say 111, and you want to move it to 121, so you're talking about $10. And the other paper say 12.9%, and 100 would not be about $13. That's a little bit more. And my concern, the one in the bottom that say in January we will be asking 9%, then October, like it was October, we had a question mark, and I concerned because I don't see a number.
I understand your concern as well. I think what Mr. Rivera is trying to present is some different option versus a flat 13% upfront today versus would you institute maybe a partial percentage increase maybe first year, and then after the EPA rate comes out in the spring.
It comes out in, it goes into effect October, but we historically know it by July.
So then you could make another adjustment at that time because it probably is going to go higher. He showed us the stats. I don't know what it's been averaged in the last few years, but it looks like 8 or 9%.
A little lower than that. This is a difficult time for everybody, and so the pressure is certainly on. We're projecting less than 5%, but things can change, and mandates and the way people are paying, stuff like that, certainly affects it.
So I think his suggestion was we front load it with a larger percent, and then potentially if we could go with a lower number later, we would do that. But if the rate came out high, we could also adjust it up at that point.
And I think probably the best thing is to go right to the 13%, because later people complain, you already gave me a raise, now it's many months, you're going to give me another, and you can pay more.
Yeah.
Just a question over the services and grant awards, or I guess assistance that's out there. How successful have some of these programs been, and which has been the most successful? I understand there's CAPCO, stuff from the state, federally, maybe even in-house. What's working?
You know, anytime you can prevent a delay, a disconnect, if the customer is working with us, what works best is the customer actively talking with us. We can continue to extend services, we can bring in additional resources. I think the best program is just the two-way communication between the utility and the customer. We can point them to all the resources that are fit for them. You know, come and do a free energy audit. Find out if they have a leaky windows that tuba caulking can fix and eliminate a lot of that winter and summer energy loss. You know, we go into a lot of places where ducting has been disconnected from the registers and the heating and crawl spaces. You know, we can put them in touch with CAPCO. We have energy efficiency conservation programs where we can replace their shower heads. So their older shower heads that are using a bunch of water and their hot water bill is $30 a month. You know, you can reduce that down to $10.
And so the program that always works best is that they can work with us and we can help identify ways to save money. That's our motivation. There's no profit. You know, we're an at-cost service, and the lower the cost we can create for the customer, the better customer service and job we can do.
Okay.
If you implement the rate hike 13% right out, when would that hit the bill?
So the earliest, if we came back, we'd have to get with Byron when we could bring in to council. We'll go back and do the numbers and get the individual rate class with the actual impact. We looked at residential, that's why you might have seen the numbers not match up 100%. It's going to take me a couple of weeks to get those back. I think we could have it implemented before the first of the year, and so we would start seeing new revenue in February, end of February.
Well, my concern is when would the customer see the hike in there?
They would see it on all bills calculated after January 1st. So they could see a little bit of late December usage, all of January.
And that's right during the,
It's peak, yeah.
high usage.
Yeah, August and January are historically our highest months.
Right.
And that's something that we certainly could time shift. You know, Byron and I talked about first quarter. You know, we could implement this in February on all bills calculated after March 1st. The tough part about it is the longer we forego this, the more we're subsidizing it.
Right.
And so we certainly can do it to have less impact on our customers, but in the long way around, we're having a bigger impact on the customers.
Right.
I personally am trying to be sensitive about the pandemic situation. Like all of us, none of us knew it was going to last this long. And so I know that there's conversations that come in and we put it off this long already, 6 months probably beyond when we needed to have it. But I'm also sensitive to the customer going through winter or Christmas and early part of the year and being able to afford a January rate hike. And so I guess I'm more comfortable feeling about a rate hike somewhere around March, 1st of March would be in my preference.
Could we prolong it that far out?
We certainly can.
I know that we're losing money by doing that.
We're using cash. We're using reserves in cash. And we've been using reserves in cash for the previous 2 years. But we can go. You know, it's important that we manage it. It's not just a financial decision. It's being empathetic to our community decision. If we can control our costs, if we can do things, we want to certainly do that.
Right.
The answer is yes. We can do a March 1st implementation. We certainly can do that.
So in order to spread that out a little bit, if we did a March 1st implementation, what if we did a 7% in March and a 7% in October? I know that's 14, I get the math, but I think because we waited, you know, almost a year from probably when we needed to have this conversation, and potentially see a new rate hike again in the fall, we're being a little bit proactive, but we're helping to also offset the burden all at once. So I don't know what the council's thoughts are about the split rate. We've done it in the past with some of our rate increases, but it'd be one way to help decrease the burden. I think, did you have anything?
Oh, I did.
Sorry.
It was, I guess it's not really a question or something addressing the statement you just made, but it was more or less about the formula and the rate. I know that we talked about percentage increase and then average overall bill, how it would be, but do you know what the formula would be in terms of what the actual increase would be?
We've done the math on what it looks like, but I was waiting for kind of some feedback and guidance, and then we'll go back and then at the next time when I come in front of council, I can do a 7 and 7, I can do a full, and I can show you exactly what each individual rate class would look like and the percentage of adjustment that's needed. Like we talked about earlier in our rate goals, you know, we're not looking just to do a blanket across the board rate increase. We're looking to set those rate increases based on what it actually costs to serve them. And so overall, we know the number. We know the revenue deficit.
But how we get there equitably is something that takes a little bit of a deep dive, and I can be prepared in that in a few minutes.
Let me ask this question of council to kind of give some guidance before we go too far. Is the council wanting to implement a one-time increase, or are you more likely to include like a split rate increase? A split?
Split.
Okay, so I think the consensus is around some sort of split rate increase, and is the council wanting to institute it as soon as possible, or would you like to wait through the winter?
And I asked to speak, I think you suggested is wait until the winter pass and then March start, and you're talking to split it 7% and October the other 7%. And I agree, you know, with the covenant, a lot of people, they working but not working like they did before. And, you know, start asking them to pay more. And they really gonna put, I mean, they can apply for the services.
So are you in agreement that we should wait till March, or are you?
I am in agreement with you.
Okay.
Wait till March, then the split.
I'd be interested in seeing how much it would be just to have the initial increase at that one-time rate. I
You mean
do,
the whole like 13% upfront? Okay.
and it's more because I kind of what Manuel's sentiments were saying earlier, having two different increases might be hard for people, and especially people tend to have short-term memory when it comes to like increases like this, and so seeing another increase like that
Just raise my rates.
Yeah, and so I just want to see all the options on the table first. But I agree with council. I'm leaning more with two. But I just want to see how it looks like. Does that help with all the options?
That's the exact direction I was looking for. So let me just reiterate to make sure we're on the same page. So when I come back to you guys, I'm going to bring you 7 and 7 split over 2 rate increases and what that looks like. The full 12.9 and anything else that you would like to see, or would you like
And
those?
starting to rate increase probably around March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And both of those scenarios, right? Yeah. Are you thinking?
I guess would there be a difference if we started? I know we're in terms of being sensitive to the pandemic, we're thinking March, but I guess is there any benefit or anything in starting in January, or if we started in January, would in turn like later on be cheaper for our customers, or is there any benefit to having in January other than, of course, more revenue?
So that's something I can bring back and show you the usage in the customer class in those months, and show you what their bill is in January and what it will be in March with these. And we can have a further, little deeper dive discussion, and maybe we come back and do another work session if we want to do some deeper dives. Byron and I can work on this together and get clarification, and we can bring it back.
But then you also have the weather swings. I mean, you don't know how cold
Yeah,
it's going
we
to be.
don't know when winter's coming.
Exactly.
Yeah, winter was in March last year, so.
Yeah.
Right.
The other question I had too, the rates that you showed up there, those were current rates, right? So I'm guessing that some of those other utilities also have rate increases in there too. So is that where the new green number is that in line with all their rate increases as well? Or do you not know that information?
So this was updated last Thursday, before the final presentation. Milton Free Water within the last month, like I said, just had a 15% rate increase.
Right.
It was their first rate action in a little bit. Umatilla Electric historically follows BPA. So when BPA makes a change, they typically implement right around that same time. Everybody is doing the best they can to control costs, cut costs, do what they can to stave off any sort of rate adjustment discussions. And so I've revisited with many colleagues, and everybody's doing everything they can not to.
I guess my point being that I got to believe everybody else is having the same conversation. BPA didn't just say HES rate went up.
Right.
So, I mean, all of these utilities have to be looking at rate increases in order to maintain their balances. And so, even though it looks like we've moved up, 3 spots, I'm not sure that we actually will with our implementation process, because I'm assuming some of these other people are going to also move up their rates.
So the majority of the rate action occurred last fall with the BPA announcement. That's when we received it.
19 fall?
Yes, 19, yeah, last fall. A year ago when it came in October. Then we were in discussion with doing it. We got in, we were going to kind of talk the first of the year. We ran into pandemic, but we've been having this discussion since, late 17 or 18 about where we're at historically financially. And so we've tightened the belt and done that. But, yeah.
I think I'm also probably in agreement with the UEC philosophy as well. When the BPA rate comes around, we should be looking at a rate increase around that time.
Yeah. We've really been working to try to get to where we're every other year, kind of looking at that, and it's just, different factors kind of pushed us on some discussions different ways, our discussions about our other utilities and some things like that. So that's what our goal is, to get to where we have this discussion every other year where we get a BPA rate.
So maybe if we do this split rate increase this year, that'll help.
Yeah, then potentially we could get back on that schedule of in 2 years, in 23, back to talk about it.
When does BPA do their rate?
They always go into effect every other year, October 1st. Yeah, correct. And they usually have the record of decision in late July, early August. And so we could do an update in August for an October 2nd rate increase if that's the direction you take.
I guess a question about the BPA rates. I see that it's very percent, 10% in terms of their rate increasing. Is that normal or is that abnormal?
So it's become the new normal. BPA announced a press release when they announced their rates, 0% rate increase. But individual utilities saw a variety of changes. The one that really got us on this is we had about a 3% rate increase from BPA, which would have been lower, but they also made the determination of a low voltage delivery charge. And so when we got that additional low voltage delivery charge that came onto our bill at $400,000 a year, that pushed our rate increase to right about 10%. Realistically, if we did have that decision, we would have been about that 3% range this year with BPA.
I think it's important to remember too that I think we still regionally have some of the lowest utility rates, electric utility rates in the nation. And so fortunately, we live along a river system and have dams that provide tidal power. And so our cost to our regional ratepayers is significantly lower than they see nationally. Even at an increased rate, we're still $60 per month lower than the national average. So I'm not saying that to belittle the fact that we have to do this rate increase and people will be impacted, but we are fortunate in where we live. Any other thoughts or comments? Do something.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to my previous question about the averages of 90-day delinquency. We were talking about some of those people having bills in excess of $200. Do you have any figures on what the average bill would be if the proposed rate increase for those people would be 90 plus days delinquent?
Yeah, that's something I can bring back. If we want to retroactive anybody, but moving forward, their 120-day bill, stuff like that would be at a new rate. So yeah, I can give you an average of what the average customer balance is at 90 days, at 60 days, and then what it would be with the adjustment and any rate adjustment.
Thank you.
I was just going to say real quickly, I know we don't have any social workers, or at least working for the city, but if we could maybe work closely with CARE and Lake County and see if maybe we can get more people into those programs, such as Capco. I know they do services like that, but I know in a lot of the conferences that we attend at NLC, we talked about ways to make homes more energy efficient, and that ultimately ends up benefiting the system, it benefits the customer, it benefits the environment, because less electricity that's being spent. So doing maybe some sort of program like that, or maybe with closer collaboration with another entity to try to get maybe more energy efficient homes out here, or just some improvements, like you said, maybe some of it ends up being just sealing off like parts of their window or their home or their doors to make it keep more heat in, but I think that would be in the city's benefit as well.
Yeah, and we have an amazing partner with Untitled Electric, has their roll-up magazine, has multiple resources that we partnered on education efforts before, and I think that's a great recommendation to circle back with them, because if it's a need for us, it's a need for them as well, and it all benefits our community.
When we communicate, do we communicate both in English and Spanish?
Yes.
So hopefully we're touching base with folks in our community and getting the message. Any other comments? Anything else?
I just really appreciate the conversation, the dialogue, and the direction. This helps both the city manager and myself come back and bring in more detailed recommendations, so I really do appreciate the dialogue and the thoughtfulness that you put into these discussions. So thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Appreciate your leadership and appreciate your willingness to be considerate of the ratepayers and members of our community and making sure we have a resilient, healthy electrical system. And just keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to adjourn our work session for a 5-minute recess, and we'll start at 7. We have a declaration of quorum, all members present. If you're just joining us, we had a work session this evening to discuss Hermiston Energy Services. Please join me in the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome this evening. As a reminder, council, make sure that when you're speaking into the microphone so that the video recording can also record you and hear you online. We're online through YouTube, right, Daniel? So go to the Hermiston website, the Hermiston YouTube channel, and you can find us. Now we're at the first opportunity for citizen input. If you are here to speak to the City Council, and it's not about an agenda item we're going to speak to later, please come up to the microphone at front, introduce yourself by name and address, limit your discussion to not more than 5 minutes, try to direct your comments to me. We are doing some sanitizing up there too, so after you leave, there's some sanitizing wipes there that you can clean down the station with. I'd appreciate that. Anybody here like to speak to the council? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, items A through E. Are there any consent agenda items that the council would like to pull? Seeing none, can I get a consent agenda approval for items A through E?
So moved.
Second. Then moved by Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Primer, that we approve consent agenda items A through E. Any public comment on those? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Just a reminder to the public, there are opportunities to participate by volunteering on our committee structure. Several committee appointments are still available. We did make a couple committee appointments this evening, but there are still plenty to participate on. Ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance number 2311, correcting ordinance number 2288. Mr. Smith?
Yes, so in November of last year, you adopted ordinance number 2288, and there were some numerical errors in the numbering of the various sections in that ordinance, and those have come forward as being a little bit problematic as we've issued some citations and different things. So what we would request is that you adopt this ordinance number 2311 to correct all those errors. There are no policy or ordinance language changes proposed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. So the errors were just something that in writing this new ordinance, they weren't caught, or, yeah?
Right, we just didn't catch that we changed some of the section numbers, and
Gotcha.
then they were not correct when officers went to cite from those. And there was no clarification.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
It's just housekeeping.
Correct.
May I request first reading of the ordinance be read by title only and call for roll call?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Lisi?
The first reading of ordinance number 2311 by only reading the title. An ordinance correcting certain section and subsection numbers adopted by ordinance number 2288, which amended chapter 90 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances entitled Animals and declaring an emergency. Mr. Mayor.
May I request that the ordinance be put on final adoption at this meeting at the second reading by to be by title only and call for roll call? Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Lisi?
The second and final reading of ordinance number 2311, my iPad left me. An ordinance by only reading the title, this is the second and final reading of the ordinance, as follows: an ordinance correcting certain section and subsection numbers adopted by ordinance number 2288, which amended chapter 90 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances entitled Animals and declaring an emergency. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that ordinance number 2311 be adopted and become effective immediately after adoption by the city council.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Harden, second by Councilor Barone, that we approve ordinance 2311 and be adopted and become effective immediately after adoption by the city council. Any public comment on that? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Smith, discussion of potential emergency shelter distance requirements.
So as requested by the council last meeting, planning staff put together some maps that put some different options or what different options might look like related to the spacing requirements in the temporary emergency shelter ordinance that was recently adopted by the council. So there are some options looking at reducing that 1,000-foot spacing to 750, and then leaving the school separation at 1,000 and reducing the park spacing to 500. And then the last map that was in your packet and reduces that to 500 feet, both factors. So I just wanted to, before the discussion with the council, just clarify that if you are interested in pursuing this change, this would need to be referred back to the planning commission for them to deliberate and take action, making a recommendation to you on this subject. So,
Do we have the ability to view these on the screen tonight?
do we?
Nothing for the screen tonight. It is being put on YouTube, but not on the screen. Okay. So, council, you have in front of you all those maps.
Yeah, could we get those explained?
Yeah.
Those are hard to read. Those are hard to read.
Clint can explain.
Okay.
Walk you through those.
So basically, on each map, what you see are 3 different color areas. There's the yellow areas, which are the city's light and heavy industrial zones. And then overlaid on those. Are you speaking in your mic? There you go. I thought I was doing better than that, sorry. So you see the yellow areas are the city's light and heavy industrial zones. And then overlaid on top of that, there are blue areas that are kind of transparent, and those represent the areas around our public and private schools. And then there are pink areas that represent the areas around the parks. Because the schools and the parks are both separate discussion items as far as spacing, I wanted to make sure you could see how the different spacing requirements might look out. So on the first map is as the ordinance sits today. And it's labeled as current exclusion area and has the 1,000-foot buffer for both the schools and the parks. When you move to the next page of your staff report, both the areas around the schools in blue and the parks in pink are reduced to 750 feet. You want the next one after that, the blue area stays with the 1,000-foot that's in our current ordinance, but the park separation is reduced to 500 feet. And then the final page reduces both blue area and pink area to 500 feet as potential options. Really, when you look at it overall, the amount of buildable land really doesn't change that much with each of the separations. But if that was something the council wanted to do, what we would be doing is actually going through a new public hearing process. So it would be referred back to the planning commission, as City Manager Smith said, do a public hearing in front of the planning commission, get a new recommendation whether to maintain the current spacing or change to a different level, and then come back to the city council for an additional hearing. So when I review these, really the only changes that I observed happen to be around First and Elm. Really, yeah, that really. You're talking UEC, you're talking the cement company, Marlette. There's some property that's currently for sale right there at the corner, on the southeast corner, that potentially could be a site, but only if you go down to the 500 foot. Is that kind of accurate? I think that's very accurate. Shelco, the first, I think Shelco, and it's maybe some property behind Shelco and UEC, but really the maps didn't change at all. I mean, did you guys see anything different?
No, no significant. There's
So-
very little benefit to it.
So the only potential spot that I saw, and I drove by it the other day, would be First Street, almost across from Ware's Auto Body on the other side of the tracks. You guys know the property I'm talking about?
So we try to get the maps up here, going to look at seven different ones. This is the original first map.
Which map is this?
This is the original map. So if you go down, just kind of slowly go down. So that's the 750 around the parks and the schools.
Right, 755 both.
That's the 500 around the park, 1,000 around the school still. And that's 500 and 500. So the only spot that really changed is that yellow in the northwest quadrant, again around First and Lori?
Is there any kind of state regulations as far as the 500, 750, or how is that in the cities we're working
I
on?
think that's what the planning commission came up with, and I think that was a lot based around tobacco, alcohol, that sort of stuff.
That's correct.
And so I think that's where they came up with that 1,000 foot right around school and park. Other comments from council? So I know, Councilor Barone, you were kind of the leader on this thought. What are your thoughts about that change?
I'm happy we're able to see the maps. I really just wanted to inquire and see like how it would look like, and really just kind of give more, just an effort to see exactly if there is a possibility with what we have laid out as of until now. I guess the question that comes into my head now is, we talked about it has to be exclusively next to another property or adjacent to another property in order for that to function. Is that something that we developed as a city, or is that something that's mandatory?
So that's a question for Quinn. So one of the rules is I think it has to be owned by somebody else. Is that right? And they have to allow the usage on that property?
We actually took out the ownership requirement, but we maintained the requirement that it needs to be an accessory use to an existing permitted industrial use. And there was actually some logic to that, because the idea is that your industrial zones are your employment generating zones. And so you don't want them to be something that permits housing as an outright use. And so by making the shelter be an accessory to that, it guarantees that you still maintain a certain employment level on the property and are maintaining your proper industrial standards.
The property on the southeast side that would be potentially walkable is up at the college. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's on probably the street across from the college, maybe behind the unemployment office, or the employment office up there. What else up there? The depot, or not the depot, the National Guard.
Yeah, it's basically all of that, office park, essentially, and so those are the unused pieces that are kind of alongside. The city owns a small parcel in there, along with the county, and then the National Guard, I think, owns another piece that's not developed, and
Yes.
if somebody else has a small piece.
So colleges don't count in the zoning.
I'm sorry?
The colleges don't count as part of the 1,000 around schools.
Right, it was only K-12.
Council, any other questions, comments? Yes, no?
I think we need to realize, we have the policy, 1,000 feet from the school system, 1,000 feet for parks. And if I remember correct, I remember seeing letters to come to us, saying they had found paraphernalia, the needles in the park. Yes, I like to help somebody that is in need of children. On the other hand, I need to think about the safety of the children too. And so, to me, I look at the south, we got a lot of places where they can go.
Just the challenge is it's not very walkable for individuals.
transportation.
Yeah, precisely, you know, current 500 feet, you know, and put children at risk.
I think part of the challenge though too, Manuel, is all of those things that were proposed found were before we put in regulations. Like that was happening already, right? So, you know, I don't know that that necessarily is going to change. Probably still going to have that stuff in the parks because we didn't do anything at this point to change that. So I think that is a little bit of a misnomer to try and say that all that's going to go away because we don't allow homeless shelter.
Well, and to that end, I think that's really why I wanted to see how the maps would look like, because I know most transient people that don't have a place to stay end up staying in parks because they need a public place or somewhere to at least rest. So that to me, like the 1,000 feet away from parks, I'm like, well, people are still going to be at the parks because they have no other place other than, you know, somewhere public. And so I kind of get more of the schools, but not really the parks. And I guess for me, even in looking at this, we've identified the south part of town. I mean, is it somewhere where there could be a shelter? Probably, but feasibly, transportation-wise, safety-wise, is it something that's probably going to happen? I don't think so. I'm not sure. I guess in wanting to bring this discussion up, I just don't feel like we had a fair shake, even though we were saying, yes, we can in M1 and M2. There's almost like no opportunity to develop anything in M1 and M2. So I guess that's kind of where I'm left in this discussion. And I mean, and that's why I wanted to re-bring it up to the front of this, to the front of the table with the council and to see exactly where we're at. For me, I guess I just left that conversation not thinking that we made the best decision. But that's just me.
If I may, one of the things that it's important to remember when we're discussing distances is that all of your zoning regulations, all of them, it doesn't matter, you know, building height, setbacks, and spacing from a park or something like that, is subject to a potential variance request. So should a organization come forth and say, well, we found one it meets your 1,000 feet from a school, but it's only 800 feet from this park over here, you know, can we get a variance from that requirement? That is something that the Planning Commission can consider. They can consider the permit for the property and the variance request at the same time.
Thank you. That's really good information, actually. Chief, I had a question for you. Currently, if a transient is sleeping in the park, do you have the authority to run them off? I mean, what is the position legally at this point?
So the discussion really boils down to the tact or the path that I look at it as is, are we allowed to close our parks? And so we're basing it on a time, not necessarily a person or a problem. So it doesn't really answer your question. It gives us the ability to make contact. We also have in our ordinance the intended use of a particular piece of equipment in a park. So say the gazebo at McKenzie Park. The intended use of that is not a shelter for sleeping in. It's a gazebo, just like the Rotary Cook Shack. So to answer your question, probably not, because of recent rulings.
And I think you know, you were here in the last meeting, maybe before, you made a statement like between 20 and 30% of your current call rates are mental health, homelessness issues on a daily basis.
That's correct. The average, since I started looking at it in August, September, October, is 20% for each shift. True calls for service, not officer-initiated activity.
And one of the interesting conversations we had with Representative Smith today was we mentioned this issue with him and working with the state, trying to find additional resources and solutions for communities like ours that are trying to address their homelessness challenge and mental health challenges. And he said that's going to be one of the principal items he's going to address when he goes to the legislature and trying to find some better solutions, because in rural parts of the state, we are challenged by limited mental health resources and addiction counseling resources as well, and trying to help those folks transition from homelessness back to productive members of our society. And so I appreciated his perspective and his understanding of what we're dealing with, and I shared that stat with him today too, and the amount of time and effort that we're spending on our police force. You know, they didn't go to school to be mental health counselors. They sometimes have to address these situations, and they're situations that are foreign to them, and you know, they don't have they probably have great training, but they aren't mental health counselors, and they shouldn't be put in that position to try to assess the situation or help that person with the mental health challenges. So, you know, it's a problem that we're going to continue to be challenged by, as we've seen in other areas of our state, as well as our community continues to grow. And so, trying to find some solutions, I think, is in our best interest for everybody. Other thoughts or comments from the council? Are there any actions you would like to take or recommendations that you're thinking as far as that presentation goes?
We're just, if council has any more input or direction for us, otherwise we're just bringing for your information and discussion.
Yeah, I guess I would entertain public comment, and specifically, I guess, regarding after you've looked at these maps, have you been able to find locations, places that this shelter could be situated? Have you had conversations with businesses that would be willing to have it as an auxiliary use? What conversations are happening in the community? And if you're not prepared to talk about it tonight, that's okay. But that's the kind of feedback I would want to hear, and I think the council would also like to hear about what's happening with that conversation, since this is not a city agency or initiative. It's you that initiated it, so I'd like to hear what your feedback or thought is on how this works or doesn't work for you. Anybody? Okay. So, no action this evening on that?
No.
All right. So, we also have a presentation from our Hermiston School District, and I don't see anybody here. I mean, Mrs. Mooney is listed.
Right, that's...
Okay. But we are 7:20.
Right.
Normally we wouldn't get
She's
late.
We can go through the other reports.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's skip to the committee reports. Committee reports, are there any this evening?
Just the selection committee, which has been.
Yeah, we have a couple selection committee appointments for the airport advisory, or airport advisory committee. We have 2 selections for. I think that's the only ones, right, Ron?
Yeah.
The selection committee. Yeah. Okay. Still looking for other applicants. I was just looking at the vacancy. How many? 12? Yeah. So a lot of opportunities for public input. Any other committee reports? Status update, Mr. Smith, on geotech advisory committee.
Right now, we're going to plan to hold a November meeting and try to get things, maybe get the chairman elected.
Good. I know the fair board, I think, is
Right, the fair board appointment should become before the council, and so that will give us I think, a forum.
Okay, mayor's report. For those of you that are participating, Wednesday and Thursday this week is the annual League of Oregon City State meeting, and it's all done electronically this year. Participate from your own couch in your living room if you want, but you can do so electronically, and get the opportunity to see me speak twice. You can see me speak all the time. But that's going on Wednesday and Thursday. You have 2 members of your current council that are running for LOC board positions. Mr. Barone, yeah, and myself. Mr. Barone is running for the board of directors. I'm running for the treasurer position. So those interviews, I believe, were Wednesday night. There are 3 people running for treasurer, 26 people running for board of directors positions, and I think there's 3 positions available. This is the most they've ever had. So great job to the state for people stepping forward. Thank you, Mr. Barone, for his willingness to participate at the board level. Congratulations to all of our council participants in the candidates. That's the word I was looking for. Our 5 candidates that had their debate the other day. 4. You know, you guys probably don't follow me on Twitter because I only have like 4 followers, but I congratulate all of you. Felt like all of you were very confident and capable of leading the city. All 5 of you could sit up here and do an excellent job. The city can't go wrong in the 5 choices they had. Unfortunately, there's only 4 positions, so that is why we extended the position of Mr. Smith until after the election, so that somebody could participate if they weren't elected. You could petition to be nominated to Mr. Smith's position. So congratulations to all of you. I thought you all did a really good job the other evening. The phone call that I had, or we had, Mr. Smith and I had with Greg Smith, Representative Greg Smith today, is going to be a monthly ongoing conversation. So once a month we will meet for lunch hour and talk about issues that are important to the city that could be addressed at the state level. So if there are issues that you guys come up with, make sure you mention them to Mr. Smith and myself, and you can mention them to Representative Smith on those meetings as well. Other council comments? Yeah.
I'd like to congratulate and say thanks to the 2 Hermiston police officers, Corporal Stu Baker and Officer Zimwalt, for their courageous actions in saving those 4 kids in the apartment fire. They did a job well done. Pass that on to the police. That was impressive. It made news. It shows kind of the quality of people we have working for us, and they are to be commended. All of us.
Yeah, they're out there putting themselves on the line every day. We appreciate their valiant efforts on a daily basis. Other comments?
Well, one thing I enjoy is the LOC's weekly on Friday, 10:05. And plus, the nice part about it is if you happen to miss it, you can listen to it later, which I bet you will.
Everybody aware of that? LC's phone calls? Once a week, they talk for an hour. Mike Foley leads a brief discussion about
Mostly
coronavirus stuff, but there's also the wildfire stuff that's going on, but also legislative stuff as we roll into legislative session here coming pretty soon. We'll probably roll into that a little bit more, but those have been very popular, several hundred. One time I think we had 500, 600 people on a phone call, so very popular. You tune in, you can ask questions, or you can listen to it later. So every Friday, I believe at 10 o'clock.
Correct. I think it's great. I appreciate LOC doing that. That brings perspective from all different aspects, including the governor's office and emergency management and so on.
And once in a while, they get the federal legislature and state legislature. So it's nice to have this conversation.
Keeps us in the loop.
Absolutely. Other council? Yep.
I'd just like to comment that if you're not registered to vote, you have until tomorrow to do so. And Shaquille O'Neal has voted for the first time. So if he can do it. And you've got an additional week to change your address if you need to as well.
So last day to register electronically is tomorrow.
Correct.
Okay. Go to vote.org. Is that, do you remember what the website?
I don't, but it is up a couple places online.
Okay. Yep. Please, you're registered. Please vote.
Yes. Our ballot drop box will also be available if you're nervous about mailing. You can drop it off at the drop box at City Hall.
Okay. Yes. Yep. From the City Hall drop box, ballot box is open.
As soon as the ballots are out and
You mailed out this week, okay.
And it's at the old city hall.
Right, it's at the old city hall where the drive-through was for.
Still the same location, it's always been.
It's still the box we can go
Yes.
and drop the ballots.
Right there, drop them off. Yep. But now, aren't they mailing them with stamps?
Yeah. Could be.
I think that was part of legislation passed last year. So,
It did, yes.
I don't know if we have that stamp on and save it. That would pretty fast if you want to get it in the mail.
I'm taking mine for that.
Yeah.
Must be postmarked by tomorrow, according to the website.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, I got two things actually. If you guys are tuning into the LOC conference, I'm going to be into how to engage diverse leaders in community. So take a look at that if you guys aren't already going. If you guys are looking for a breakout session, then hopefully you guys can go to that one. The other thing I got pretty proud of, so we were recently appointed by the governor to the Eastern Oregon Regional Equity and Recovery Council. And that's going to be a council established here in the EO, mainly for post-COVID recovery and how to equitably distribute funds that the state has. So it's kind of more of a brainstorming council on guidance for EO and the governor. So happy to represent our council and our community in that. And last thing is, of course, just like David said, make sure to vote, register, and just vote.
So Roy, is Courtney, Regional Solutions Team, she's managing that?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you getting the Hermiston?
We'll see. All of that is online.
Advocate.
We'll see. All of it's online.
Oh, it is online, okay. All right, good, congratulations. I know Roy may have mentioned this before too, he sits on the People of Color Caucus, I believe, Oregon City level, and that caucus was recently recommended by Diversity and Equity Committee to be a recognized caucus by the board. And I don't know if did they approve that at last time?
Yeah, that would be, I think it will be on our agenda this week.
During the conference this week. Okay, so, so they'll have an opportunity to recognize or be represented the People of Color Caucus at the state level as well. So thank you for your leadership there. Anything else from Council Manager?
So just a few items I wanted to, we were discussing this kind of as the meeting started, the movement back to the watch list for Umatilla County, and our weekly conference call with our Umatilla County Recovery Coalition, county and various cities, the hospitals, those things. We talked about this briefly, and just, it seems like the reason, even though our numbers have not gone to the heights that they were recently in the past, but we're showing more difficulty tracing the cases, and that's an area of concern for the state, and so that's why they put us back on the watch list. So, that's an important piece of containing the spread, and so that's why they're concerned. Want to let the council know we just received the hard copy version of the Parks Plan update. So if you're interested in having a copy, they have them here. I forgot to remind Larry he can have some out for us tonight, but I'll make sure that they're available at our next meeting if you want to have one. And they'll also be available here and at City Hall. Also wanted to let you know that there was, you may have heard, often Facebook picks up on this stuff, but there was an extra law enforcement presence in the city today doing some drug enforcement arrests, and so that was going on today. And there was also a large similar bust on Friday of a remarkable size that the Bent team should be releasing a press release on that soon with all the details. But I wanted to let the council know.
Is that like 5 a.m. this morning?
I don't know what time it was, Chief.
I get up pretty early, and there was a lot of siren about 5 a.m. this morning.
Today was an all-day.
It was all day siren. Okay.
And And then lastly, I don't know if Superintendent Mooney would share this in her update, but tonight at the school board meeting, our school resource officer, Betty Nava, was recognized by the school board for a life-saving award. That it's an award from the department, but her actions were able to save a life, and so they recognized her there, trying to help them get a little more familiar with our school resource officers that function in the district. So just wanted to let the council know about that.
Awesome. Well, Chief, please pass along congratulations to Officer Nava and her valiant efforts to help kids in the schools.
I will. All three school resource officers and Captain Enan were at the school district meeting tonight. He texted me and sent a video. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but Officer Nava was surprised, and the school board was very appreciative. We've done probably half a dozen life-saving awards over the years, and typically we do them at the Public Safety Committee meetings. This felt appropriate just because we have two new faces in the school resource officer program, and we just wanted an avenue, one, to get the new school resource officers in front of the school board, and two, to be able to keep a secret from Betty.
Well, I'm sure she was blushing and embarrassed and all that sort of stuff, and so congratulate her for it.
So that's all I have.
Wow, this is going to be the shortest meeting we've done in a while.
Oh my God, it's 7 minutes.
It's a record. All right, we are adjourned. I started it. Technical notes. They have